Welcome back to the Fostering Financial Victories podcast. My name is Erik Mazel. I'm your co-host today with Miss Bri Prosser, and this is the second installment of our small business series where we are highlighting some local business owners here in the upstate of South Carolina. Our guest today is Mr. Kent Barber. Kent, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come and share your story.
Appreciate you guys having me on. It's an honor.
Cool. So Bri, where do you want to kick this thing into gear from?
So we kind of talked a little bit beforehand about how you got to where you are today. And so can you give us like a little synopsis of how you got there?
Absolutely. So just in terms of, I have a small business called Daybreak Investors that launched in July, so about a little less than a year ago, as well as a clothing store, boutique store in Greenville called Harrington's that launched about a year ago. And kind of the road to get there has been very windy over the past 15 years. Grew up here in Greenville. I left for high school. I left and went to a boarding school outside of Atlanta in Rome, Georgia called Darlington. I wasn't a bad kid. It was my family's from the Northeast that they migrated down here with the textile industry in the 50s. And so our family, we have a textile company called Kent Manufacturing, Kent Wool. It's been operating since 1843, actually. So almost 180 years old. A tradition that dates back to making uniforms for the Confederate and Union armies in the Civil War. So rich history there. That brought us to South Carolina fully in the 70s. I was born in the 80s, so grew up here in Greenville. And then when I graduated college, I went to Auburn, and when, like most college graduates, had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I had applied to law school. I thought that was going to be kind of the plan, and went totally opposite and went and moved to the Caribbean for a year with some two good guy friends, Tyler Gregg and Owen Lucas. And down there, there was 4 girls from Clemson doing the same thing. We became like brothers and sisters. And one of their best friends, Lauren, came to visit them at the end of our first summer. And she actually became my wife about 2 years later. But while I was down there, my uncle, a guy by the name of Mark Kent, I came back for Christmas, and he kind of looked at me in the face. We had lunch, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm bartending in St. Thomas." And he said, "No, I know, but what's your plan?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to go to law school next year." And he said, "Well, do you want to?" And I was like, "Does anybody want to?" And so,
no offense, attorneys.
No offense. But he said, "Well, have you ever thought about working for our family business?" And I said, I didn't study textiles in school. I don't really know anything about it. And he said, "Well, you'll learn everything you need to know inside the walls. We'll teach you that." And he said, "You'll know within, a couple of weeks if it's for you or for not. If it's not, that's okay." And so I moved back May of 2008 and started working at Kent Wool. 2007 was their best year ever. 2008 was their worst year ever.
Yeah, you kind of started at the worst possible time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was a naive 23-year-old that was dating a girl that I was in love with. And so I was kind of sheltered and blinded to really what was going on. And my uncle was this bigger than life kind of guy. And so he made it seem okay through all this crazy stuff. But that got my career started in textiles and apparel. Sold yarn, worked throughout the plant the first year, worked with some great people that had worked for our family for years. My first boss was a lady by the name of Joanne Roper that had worked for us for 55 years. And she told me stories of my granddad and my uncle that I didn't even know, and what we actually did, like as a company, which embarrassingly I didn't really know until then. And from there, went out to sell our core product, which was worsted wool yarn. And there's a lot of high-end fashion, outdoor hosiery, hiking socks to lower-end buffing pad grade that uses our yarn, or at least did back then. And I was selling buffing pad yarn, which everyone has that, itchy grandmother sweater story. That wool is still used, but it's in industrial products like buffing pads to strip paint and stuff like that.
That makes sense.
So my biggest clients were like 3M and stuff like that. But at the same time, it was a 100-year-old type business. I knew your granddad, I knew your uncle, all this stuff. And so like paving your own way was very difficult. And about 2 years into working at Kent Wool, Mark had a great idea for a consumer good product line called the Kent Wool Performance Golf Sock. That came from him playing in the BMW Charity Pro-Am as a amateur, getting a blister, just wearing run-of-the-mill, FootJoy pads, cotton socks. Went in the pro shop, couldn't find anything of substance. I think he might have wore his Smart Wool hiking socks the next day on the course. And luckily his caddy that week was our president of manufacturing, Keith Horn. And while Mark was complaining about bad socks in golf, Keith said, well, you own a wool company. You might as well do something about it. And so that's where that idea came from, and was an opportunity for me to jump into something totally new for the company. And so that was 2009-ish. Spent a lot of time up in Hickory, North Carolina, which at one time was the hosiery capital of the world, pretty much. And we developed a very over-engineered, high price point golf sock. And we launched it in 2010 at the PGA show in a time where no one was really launching anything new. They were all, deep in the recession and weren't spending money innovating. And we came out with a $20 wool golf sock where the industry leader was about $9.99 cotton ped. And we just, in a very genuine but fun, gregarious way, just gave out socks to everybody. And from that, there's a lot more hard work than this sounds, but we had so much fun with different opportunities, from having guys like Bubba Watson be the face of our brand for 6 years, seeing, him win 9 PGA Tour events, 2 Masters, Ryder Cup team members, the Twitter following go from 7,000 to over 1 million, talking about our socks and our products, having golf teams like Clemson and them being big ambassadors for us, and doing the first ever sponsorship of the Association of Tour Caddies, where one caddy by himself isn't compelling, but 150 caddies as one voice for your product, carrying 50-pound bags, walking all the rounds is compelling.
Sure.
And so, during that time, I fell in love with branding, with consumer products, with making a quality product that people don't need, but that when they find it, they love it. And then you see the word of mouth buzz start going, and some compounding momentum happen, much like with what you guys do in the market, behind the scenes. And so from there, it's you never really know what. Obviously, a lot of life happened in that time. Lauren and I got married. Started having building our family. We have 3 kids now. It was my uncle was never. He was always very open to, hey, Kent, if you have another opportunity that comes, like, you should take it and get out of these walls and grow and learn. And because he never really got that chance, because my granddad died when he was 28, and so. Parts of me took that offensively, like more insecurely, as like, do you not see a future here for me? Am I not doing a good job? It took a couple of years later to really realize like the meaning behind that. But in 2016, I did have that opportunity come up, and a mentor, a guy I respect very much. His name's Bob Humphreys. He leads a publicly traded apparel company called Delta Apparel that is headquartered here in Greenville that no one really knows about, but it's a behemoth, and they own a bunch of brands, Salt Life and Sophie, if you remember the cheerleading shorts and all that stuff back in the day. But they had bought a small brand called Coast Apparel, and Bob offered me the opportunity to come try to relaunch that brand for them. And so I left the family company to go to the publicly traded company and to do that. And, it was one of those things that I understood now what Mark was talking about, because I felt this burden lifted from my shoulders of being the sixth generation family member at the company, to what the future looked like, to all this undue expectation you put on yourself, to actually just being an employee number X that if he didn't do Y would get let go. Or if he did, really well, then would be celebrated and stuff like that. And it was really refreshing, honestly.
Probably a whole different experience going from a family business into the publicly traded side.
It definitely was. And you don't realize what you take for granted.
Sure.
And the trust and autonomy I had at the family business, set your own schedule to, say I'm gonna go to my kid's ex, and then it'd be like, yeah, have fun, it'd be great, we'll see you tomorrow, and to actually have the ability to really influence decision-making process, ideas, which I still had, because Coast was very small, but Delta was such a big organization, and there was, things built in, and, all these processes and different stuff. And so, yeah, it was, you don't realize like what matters to you until it's not there.
Right.
And when I was there about 8 or 9 months, and unseen, unfortunate, and tragic, but Mark passed away unexpectedly. That one, it was a shock to our family, which it doesn't feel like it's been 4 years, but two, it put a lot of things in perspective. But then at the same time, a lot more responsibility was shared throughout different family members. But I became responsible for a lot of things. I didn't really, I knew what our plan was, ironically, which is good. And we had a plan and had everything kind of set up, but it was so unexpected that it was not top of mind by any means. And so that was kind of a very crazy time. We were pregnant with our third child, and kind of overnight I became trustee, fiduciary, general partner of a limited partnership, and really just a lot of eyeballs were on me for decision making and for just taking care of them, and I really had no idea what to do in that.
So you've come full circle working. You said a lot in there. So
Yeah.
you didn't tell us about the year in the Caribbean. So that threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm still stuck there a little bit.
We can have a whole nother podcast on that.
I bet so. So you go from working in family business, working in corporate America, back to kind of being pushed into a almost leadership role in your family because of an early death for a family member, to now you are a small business owner on your own, kind of back into that unknown area every day.
And I'll tell you, there's another part of the story that was to get to the business owner part, which I'll talk about. But some of the silver linings that came out of the year in the Caribbean, besides meeting my wife and having a lot of fun, was I was a bartender and a waiter in a very busy Irish pub on the marina. And I learned so much about serving others and other people's behaviors and how to respond nicely to not nice situations, and how to deal with, people of different cultures, West Indian culture, working in the kitchen that weren't being paid as much as we were making tips, and how to really be in relationship with that. And I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, and I haven't really even talked about it, but working in the service industry in a different country, even though it's U.S. territory, was definitely vital in terms of how I dealt with stress, how I deal with people and their emotions and conflict and stuff too. But so after all this was going on with the family responsibility, I had an opportunity. The truth, people, right away, gut reaction was, you gotta look at Kent Manufacturing, and still to this day, stepping in Mark's shadows and his shoes was just not of interest. And now I totally understood what he meant in terms of get out there and do other things, because I didn't realize all the stuff he did holistically for the family beyond just running the family business. And around that same time, the Lord opened another door that I didn't see coming. A dear friend of mine, Drake Bagwell, reached out, and he was the head of sales at Southern Tide, and they had created an organic division they called it Triple C, but it's really special markets. And it was collegiate licensing, resort, golf, and corporate channels, basically anything embellished.
Sure.
And so it had grown just organically. And so we went to breakfast about something else, and he was like, I got something, you're my guy, and I want you to look at it. And I looked at it, and it was the first time opportunity to be part of a brand, an apparel brand that had, overcome all the growth, was profitable, was run by a Fortune 500 publicly traded company that owned other brands like Tommy Bahama, Lilly Pulitzer, and it was really the big leagues. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and that was back in 2018 spring, and that was just a wonderful opportunity. But around the same time, as you guys heard, I was just spinning plates. I was pretty overwhelmed with just life and responsibilities, and with that, and the Southern Tide initially out of the gate was going really well, but I was still a slave to all of my responsibilities in the other sides, and so ran into a friend at the time, but we weren't that close at the time. His name's Milt Lauder. It was after my son's baptism, and Milt and I were catching up, and he kind of could sense that I was not doing great. And so I started working with Milt one-on-one from a psychologist patient standpoint. And that's been a little over 3 years, and it's come full circle since, which I'll talk about later. But it was really the first time I took time. I'd been a part of some great men's groups, Bible studies. I have an accountability group with two guys in town that I love very much. But this was the first time of someone really penetrating who I was and why I was the way I was, and speaking truth into, parts of my past, lies that I was telling myself, and really changed my focus from just day-to-day reaction to a proactive visioneering for my life that's congruent with everything, not just business, not just family responsibility, not just parenthood, or not just father or being a husband. And it was a congruent vision that we built out, that where only the last line had to do with my occupation. And that was amazing. We were able to build out a kind of a vision for my team at Southern Tide. And it had nothing to do with the corporate structure, but it was to be the lights in the darkness, and that we couldn't control other people, the past or the future, but you can control your thoughts and your attitudes and your actions and your effort and your preparation and your response. And you can be kind. And we had 3 pillars. It was build relationships, always create memorable experiences, and serve others well. And through those 3 pillars, we could achieve any goal that was given to us. And we did. I mean, we grew that division in both revenue and personnel well beyond any quarterly goal that was given. And so it was really fun to be a part of. Lovely people, really still love the brand. And obviously during that time, COVID hit, which just caused a lot of different, questions and thoughts and perspective and different things. And so around that end of 2020, explored a partnership agreement with one of my teammates at Southern Tide's twin sisters, Jenny Hall here in Greenville. And she had a vision for a high-end women's and men's boutique that had an experience element inside of it, high-touch service, online component, and just a great price point options and stuff too. And looking back now, what I've kind of visioned out with Daybreak, but this was kind of the cart before the horse, but it was really, believing in a person's vision and just helping that vision come to life, and then just getting out of the way and letting them run with that vision. And so we launched Harrington's around this time last year. Our grand opening date was May 1st, but our soft launch was April 24th. And it was one of those things that still exceeds my expectations, just in terms of how it turned out, not just the aesthetic, but just the people we have working for us there. We've been so blessed through this. We hear nothing about staffing issues and all of that. We have great managers and employees and vendors. We have so many different vendors and stuff like that the store always seems full, which has been a blessing during this supply chain circus that we've all been dealing with over the past 18 months. From that, it was really cool to see a business that you own, people willing to spend money with you. And my mind started going into this. It doesn't have to be this hard. Like we were like at work at Southern Tide, it was hard. There was a lot of obstacles, things that you can't control and stuff going on behind the scenes and stuff. And it was very frustrating. And so I talked about, in another talk I gave once, was like, with me, sometimes I just need that shove, that God shove. And so early July of last 2021, last summer, I got that shove. And it was such a blessing. One, I probably wouldn't have left on my own because I just cared about my team so much. But two, it gave me almost like when I left Kent Wool, a burden lifting freedom to just know I left a place better than I found it. And that I wasn't running from that opportunity, that I was running to the next. And so I started going on long walks during COVID. It was kind of my outlet. Mm-hmm. Take my dog. I first started with my two younger kids until they started not liking them. And, during those walks, I'd have my quiet time. I'd have my thinking time. I'd listen to podcasts. I'd make phone calls. And I just really fell in love with these urban walks around the neighborhood. And I started kind of thinking, like, what was next? And I knew I didn't want to, acquire a business, like buy a business and learn it and start it. And I really started thinking about just the parts of the business that gave me great frustration. And it all comes down to like product, inventory, cost of goods sold, personnel, scheduling, all of that stuff that, is heavy investment. And then you hope it works. And so I was always jealous of my brother. He was in more of a software research and consulting role. He worked with Gartner for a while, corporate executive board for that. Now he's with DeVry University. And I was always jealous because he was never out of inventory. He always could. It's very similar to what Foster Victor does, where it just comes down to time, right, a lot of the times. And so I really whiteboarded out like what I like to do. And it's people, connections, relationships, creating memorable experiences, building out strategies, executing those strategies for people. And from that, I kind of had my vision for this other tag team to be the lights in the darkness. And when does the light break the darkness? And it's at daybreak. And that's where Daybreak, the genesis of Daybreak came from. And so I called my aunt, who during that time after my uncle's death, she is stewarding the family companies and stuff and doing a great job. And has been a blessing on that front as well as some other family fronts. But asked her, we have some buildings in Greenville, and asked her if there was any spots that there's on one of the floors, there's like 8 one-room offices. I was like, is there an office? She said, yeah, there's some openings. I'll connect you to our property manager. And so I rented an office, had my branding and pitch decks and all that stuff done with a very gifted friend of mine, Connor. And then just started having meetings, a lot of them, breakfast, coffees, lunches, and just talking about what I wanted to do. And from that, I was overwhelmed with the opportunities that I had to come alongside business owners and leadership teams to help with key initiatives. As it's Daybreak Investors, the only investment we have is Harrington's, but the other investments that we have are really more on my time and talents with these business owners and their companies and their teams, which has been a lot of fun. Of those opportunities, I decided on 5 of the 20 because I really, had a lot of great advice from people I trust about not to spread myself too thin, to really just go after the projects that I believed in, that the quality over the quantity, and that's been great advice, and I've really been proud to be partnered with who I'm partnered with now.
Cool. So what is your day-to-day role now?
Well, I'm a one-man shop. Daybreak is one employee, and I have of my 5 clients, of my 5 partnerships, 4 of them are here in Greenville. One's in New York City, and the one in New York City. There's a gentleman here in town that's their head of marketing, so we get to see each other. And then I have a team member up there named Sam, that she's my day-to-day contact and really keeps us accountable where we're going. And it's worked out very, very well. They have a great culture. It's a big apparel brand up there, and we're emerging into a new market for them, and so. That one's been kind of different because it's all been virtual, which obviously through the pandemic you get used to, but to have a client like that you've never really met in person, it's been a cool thing and a very not awkward, but just like it's just not normal for me because I'm a relational person. And then the other 4 groups here in Greenville, I spend, even though I have my own office, I spend time in their office a lot during the week. And my need of people have come through their teams and stuff like that. So
you talked about how at one point you had lots of spinning plates going on. And I think that's something that most business owners that we've talked to can definitely relate to. As a one-man band kind of deal where you are now, how do you balance your home life and your work life without feeling like it's spinning plates all the time?
Right. And so what's great is my life has only gotten more complicated since that time. But through my work with Milt and understanding where I'm at my best, like when am I at my best, and understanding, taking care of myself before my responsibilities is a must. Understanding where my priorities lie with my wife and my kids, in my family, where I can't be replaced type stuff, and understanding where my identity isn't and where it is has been a key in my growth of that. And, with Daybreak, the why behind the business is to be the light in the darkness. And so some of that might be paid, but a lot of it's not. And it's spending time with people, learning about them, like just being an intentional person in that aspect. But back in that time, I built out a team around me, and Foster Victor is part of that team. And so, obviously being a marketing major, I did my MBA and did focus on accounting and finance just because it wasn't my strong suit, but it's not my strength. And so having groups like Grey Rock Management Solutions, Scott Wigington and his team, having groups like Foster Victor and McCrite and Rob and them, having attorneys like Merline and Meacham and Doug O'Neill, and coaches like Milt Lauder and Drew Brannon, and accountability teammates like Will Lucas and Ben Martin have been critical to understanding like who I am as a man and my identity, to where this otherworldly stuff doesn't overwhelm me. And there is moments, I mean, it's an hourly thing to reset your mind and to reset your thoughts, because we have like 80 to 90,000 thoughts a day, and inherently they're going to be negative if we don't get ahead of it. And so it's been a day by day thing.
So from a local impact on Greenville, we talked earlier about, what do you envision with Daybreak doing in the future? What do you see from a support group here in Greenville for small business owners? I know the last couple of years has been a little bit weird with what's been going on. Kind of give us your insight or outlook on what you think Greenville will ultimately turn into from an opportunity standpoint.
Well, I mean, if you just read any publication that talks about travel destination tourism, it's becoming quite a spot. And, growing up here, our family invested in Greenville a long time ago. We moved our plant from Philadelphia down to Pickens County in the 50s, and the family moved down in the 70s. And then in the mid 90s, Mark and my grandmother and my mom formed Three Foxes limited partnership that bought the old Liberty building downtown next to Sobeys, and then the Kent Court building, to keep those historically preserved. And so family wise, we believed where Greenville was going a long time ago. And just with our unique combination of public office and private that have come together, Unity Park as an example of that, but just where it's all going, it's just, I'm in awe every day I walk downtown and see it and see what's happening. But the amount of entrepreneurs, the amount of business owners, the amount of capital that's coming into our city, there's so much stuff that's going on. And from a Daybreak investment standpoint, like where I really want to invest is in, people I believe in their visions, that are passionate and they're doing it purposefully. And that might be around textiles and apparel, that might not be. It could be in totally other things. And so it's I have a vision, I have a plan for it, but it's one of those things that happens with relationships and meetings and different things where opportunity comes up. And but no, I see Greenville, one, just as a wonderful community that's very open and genuinely nice to others, that's going to just continue inviting innovation and growth and business and opportunity for a while, if not indefinitely.
Okay. Is there anything that that you wish you would have known before you started getting into running a business?
Well, I wish I would have trusted in my faith and other things a lot more than worried about my own personal plans, because that path definitely wasn't straight.
So it wasn't what most people think it looked like?
Not at all.
Yeah.
But it's been I wouldn't change any part of it. And been an amazing, the plans that have been in front of me, I couldn't have imagined or dreamt up myself. So we spend so much time worrying about things we can't control, and it can consume our thoughts and our energy and our attitudes. And so,
Do you say something from a business owner standpoint? If you were giving advice to somebody who's starting a business, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would tell them to just focus on this?
focus on your core competencies and just go. Don't worry about the things you don't have.
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like you've taken at least 1 or 2 pieces of everything that you've done and put it all together, taken all the good parts to get to where you are today.
That it's so true. The intangibles that I've gained through my different stops are invaluable. The network, the people, the relationships, the experiences, the knowledge, from the janitor to the general manager type stuff, and it's been just invaluable.
From a maybe a challenge standpoint, what do you see in the next 12 months as the market, the economy starts to shift around a bit? Are you anticipating any challenges that you're already kind of thinking through, or is it just literally day by day as what we're seeing kind of shifts around?
In terms of my partners, my business partners, each of their businesses are different. And, one of my partners is a t-shirt manufacturer and printer, and just the cost, the inflation of price of goods and commodities and stuff is really a problem. And when you're dealing with cotton and stuff like that, and there's a ceiling of what people will pay for certain things. And so obviously the supply chain issues on that, inflation issues on that. Obviously people have been spending money like wild in the past 18 months with just being pent up from quarantining to not going on vacations and stuff. And I do see that with all that's going on in the economy leveling out for sure. You'll see as interest rates are rising with home mortgage rates and all of that will slow down the market a little bit. Obviously with communities like Greenville where people are flocking to from the bigger cities, we won't feel as much of an impact. Construction's at an all-time high, all of that. So and there's still so much, uncertainty in terms with politics, with identity, with what people are going through, mental health. Like, no one's talking about that. Like, it's crazy. People are lost. And so that's where, like, my favorite part of my job is just asking people how they are and not worrying about where they're going business wise, but just how they are as a person. And, my aid to them might not be, putting together a strategy and executing a new market expansion. It might be connecting them to a men's group or to my psychologist or to my financial partner at Foster Victor or Gray Rock for someone to talk to and stuff. And so I think in where we're living today, vulnerability and transparency is at an all-time high, that you need that in your conversations, in your intentionality with people, because you never know what people are going through.
This is true. All right. So you want to ask the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit, but you go ahead. I don't want to steal your thunder.
All right. So everyone who's been on the podcast, we have asked 2 questions. The first one is, what were the last 2 things that you bought?
Last 2 things I bought. I bought a pair of True Links golf shoes and a pair of On Cloud running shoes.
All right.
There you go. Very active. Now, if you could buy anything in the world, regardless of cost, what would it be?
Time.
It's the most obvious answer, and I don't think anyone's ever said that.
We've had jet planes and Disney World and all of the above,
but
I
a lot
think
of different things. Time is it.
Time is it.
So, Kent, thank you for spending time with us. Do you want to give everybody an insight on how they can reach out to you if they want to connect?
Sure. You guys, my email is just kent@daybreakinvestors.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, Daybreak Investors, or Kent Barber. And if anyone wants to grab coffee or lunch, I'm open.
There you go. Quite the offer of lunch and coffee. And Erik, you want to tell them how they can find us?
Yeah, so if you've enjoyed this, share this with a friend. If you've got questions or suggestions on topics that you would like for us to cover, you can contact us directly through our website at fostervictor.com, or you can follow us on our Instagram at Foster Victor Wealth Advisors. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Information contained in this podcast was intended for general use, not to be used as specific advice. For content tailored to your personal situation, please contact one of our wealth coaches.